Okay, now hazard and risk. Hazard and risk topics. Hazard, something that could cause harm to a user, and risk, the chance of a hazard causing harm. Risk assessment, the identification of the hazard involved in carrying out a procedure and control measure needed to reduce the risks from those hazards. So we understand a hazard, something that could cause harm to a user. It may chemicals. Hazard may be chemicals or apparatus that could cause harm to user, like chemicals like sulfuric acid. Chemicals that could cause harm, so it is hazard. And like some apparatus, if break, it can cut your skin, so the hazard. So apparatus or chemicals are hazard. Okay, risk, the chance of a hazard causing harm, like sulfuric acid can damage your skin. This is the risk. Okay, risk assessment, the identification of a hazard. You will identify the hazard involving with the procedure and control measure to reduce the risks from those hazard. Okay, identification of hazard with its procedure, how to control measure involving hazard is called risk assessment of. Okay, what is hazard? A hazard is something that could cause you harm. For example, in the lab, this could be a certain chemical or Bunsen or a Bunsen burner. This hazard. What is risk? A risk is the chance of a chance a hazard can cause. A risk is the chance a hazard can cause. The risk of dilute sulfuric acid is that it can irritate to skin or eye. Okay, a greater risk would be the carcinogenic properties of benzene. This is the risk that increase your risk of developing cancer if you are exposed to it. So this is the risk if you exposed to benzene. Why is it important to carry out risk assessment when dealing with hazardous materials? Why is it important to carry out a risk assessment when dealing with hazardous materials? The risk assessment is important as it identifies the hazard. Okay, its risk assessment is important as it identifies the hazards and potential risk materials and apparatus pose. It then puts a place precaution. You can take safety measures and action that can be taken if the risk arises. So you can take the for taking precaution and action if risks arise. So risk assessment is important to identify hazard and its potential risk potentiality, and its how to take what type of precaution is needed, what type of action is needed if risks arise. So for this reason, risk assessment is important. How can risks be reduced when carrying out a reaction? Okay, work on a smaller scale. You take small number of chemicals, you can reduce risks. If you say hydrochloric acid, benzene, you will take small amount. So you take smaller scale and take precaution specific to each hazard identified. You take specific precautions, safety measure. Okay, if possible, use alternative method that use a less hazardous substance. Okay, you take like you like like benzene. If you want to as a solvent benzene, you use solvent carbon tetrachloride solvent instead of benzene. So you take alternative chemical which has less hazardous substance. Okay, you take precautions. Taking precaution, you can reduce risks. You're taking smaller chemicals, you can reduce risks, and taking alternative chemicals less hazardous, which is less hazardous substance. So you can we can reduce risks can be reduced by carrying out the following measures. Hazard warning symbols. This is health hazard symbol. Include warning on skin rashes, eye damage or injections. Corrosive. Corrosive. This sign is corrosive. Like this chemicals is flowing in your hands and hands damaging. And here chemical is flowing is metal is damaging. So it can damage skin or metal. This is corrosive. Can skin burn and permanent eye damage. Corrosive, all acid are corrosive, all bases are corrosive, like sulfuric acid, hydrochloric acid, sodium hydroxide. These are corrosive. And flammable. This sign is flammable. Can catch fire easily if a heater comes in contact with flammable, like methane, ethanol. They are flammable. Okay, now acute toxicity. This is a life-threatening effect, even in small quantity, like benzene, like mercury, arsenic. This is the acute toxicity sign. This is the hazard warning symbols. Okay, this is the homework. You should do this homework. Okay. Otherwise you will not understand these topics. You do this homework by today. Okay, thank you for joining today's class.